Admiral Peterson stepped forward with additional data. Sentinel Prime, we're not asking you to disappear entirely. We're asking you to change your role from guardians to advisors. Help us build this cooperation network instead of maintaining a control system. And if aggressive species refuse to participate, Sentinel Prime asked. Then the rest of us will deal with them together, Dr. Turner said. A coalition of cooperative species should be able to handle a few aggressive ones, without resorting to genocide. Dr. Kumar activated another display showing projected population and resource data. We've also identified several uninhabited galaxy regions where aggressive species could expand without threatening others. The universe is big enough for everyone if we plan properly. Sentinel Prime was quiet for several minutes, while the alien representatives continued expressing support for the human proposal. Finally, the architect spoke again. Your approach is risky and untested. If it fails, millions of beings could die in the conflicts that follow. If we continue your approach, millions of beings will definitely die, Jake replied. The only difference is that they'll die secretly and individually, instead of openly and collectively. And at least this way, they'll die fighting for their own choices instead of being eliminated for choices they never got to make, President Santos added. Sentinel Prime's expression seemed to change slightly. The architects will consider your proposal. However, implementation will require the gradual withdrawal of our management systems. This process will take decades and could be dangerous. We understand the risks, Jake said, but we think the potential benefits are worth it. Very well, Sentinel Prime said finally. The architects will begin the transition to an advisory role. We will help establish your galactic cooperation, counsel and provide guidance during the early stages. However, if this expiry, 6 months after the lunar conference, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Unity, humanity's newest and most advanced starship. The vessel had been built specifically for this moment, equipped with the best technology Earth could produce and carrying representatives from every major human government. Beside him stood Admiral Carol Peterson, President Maria Santos, Dr. Alex Turner, and Dr. Rachel Kumar. They were preparing to meet with Sentinel Prime and the architects to deliver humanity's final decision about their future role in the galaxy. All stations report ready, Admiral, Commander Lisa Parker announced from her communications station. She had requested a transfer to Jake's crew for this historic mission. Thank you, Lisa, Jake replied. Any word from our diplomatic contacts? Sir, we're receiving acknowledgement signals from 47 different alien species, Lisa reported. They're all confirming their participation in today's meeting. Dr. Turner was reviewing data on his tablet. I still can't believe we managed to contact so many civilizations without the architects stopping us. They're curious about what we're planning, President Santos said. Sentinel Prime told us they would allow us to present our alternative before making their final decision about humanity's fate. Dr. Kumar was studying intelligence reports about the various alien representatives who would be attending. The species we've contacted represent about 60% of the galaxy's civilizations. If we can get them to agree to our proposal, it might actually work. Jake looked out at the stars through the main viewport. The past 6 months had been the most intense period in human history. While Earth's governments had been divided about which architect option to choose, Jake and his team had been working on something completely different. Danny, give me a status report on our translation and communication systems, Jake requested. Danny, Brooks, now promoted to Chief Science Officer, looked up from his station. All systems are functioning perfectly, Admiral. We can communicate simultaneously with all 47 species in their native languages. The Universal Translator Protocols we developed are working better than expected. The achievement had been remarkable. In just 6 months, humanity had managed to make contact with dozens of alien civilizations, learn their languages, and convince them to participate in an unprecedented galactic conference. The effort had required the combined resources of every nation on Earth. Incoming transmission from Sentinel Prime, Lisa announced. The main view screen activated, showing the familiar metallic figure of the architect representative. Admiral Morrison, President Santos, distinguished representatives of humanity, are you prepared to announce your decision? Jake stepped forward. We are, Sentinel Prime, but first, we want to make sure you understand what we're proposing. Have observed your activities over the past 6 months, Sentinel Prime said. You have made contact with numerous species and organized what you call a Galactic Cooperation Summit. However, we do not see how this changes the fundamental choice you must make. President Santos joined Jake in front of the view screen. Sentinel Prime, humanity rejects all 3 options you offered us. We're not going to accept your protection, we're not going to face the galaxy alone, and we're not going to take over as the new Galactic Guardians. Sentinel Prime's expression didn't change, but there was a long pause before it responded. You cannot simply reject reality, President Santos. The galactic system we have created requires management. Without supervision, aggressive species will destroy peaceful ones. That's where you're wrong, Dr. Turner said, stepping up to join the conversation. Your system requires management because it was designed to require management. You've created artificial scarcity and competition by keeping species isolated from each other. We isolated them to prevent conflicts, Sentinel Prime replied. You isolated them because you were afraid of conflicts, Dr. Kumar corrected. But conflict isn't always destructive. Sometimes it leads to cooperation and growth. Jake activated a holographic display that showed the results of the past 6 months of diplomatic work. Sentinel Prime, let us show you what we've accomplished. The display showed star charts marking the 47 species that humanity had contacted. Each species was connected to several others by communication lines, showing a growing network of diplomatic relationships. In 6 months, we've established communication between species that have never known about each other's existence, Jake explained. We've created the first galaxy-wide communication network in history, and we've gotten them all to agree to try something new. Admiral Peterson activated additional displays showing economic and scientific data. We've also started the first interspecies trade agreements and scientific cooperation projects. The Velhari are sharing their agricultural technology with the Kozani. The Fentari are providing medical knowledge to help other species deal with genetic diseases. This is all very impressive, Sentinel Prime said, but it does not address the fundamental problem of aggressive species. The Zephyrian Empire was not peaceful, and there are others like them. Actually, it does address that problem, President Santos said. We've been talking to some of the species you classified as aggressive. Most of them are only aggressive because they're fighting over limited resources or territory. But the galaxy is enormous. There's room for everyone if we coordinate properly. Dr. Turner brought up biological data on several species. We've also discovered that some of the aggression you've observed is actually the result of your interventions. When you relocate a species or limit their expansion, they become more desperate and violent. Jake stepped forward again. Sentinel Prime, we're proposing something that has never been tried before. Instead of managing the galaxy through control and elimination, we want to manage it through cooperation and communication. The Galactic Cooperation Council, Dr. Kumar explained. A voluntary association of species working together to solve common problems. No one species would have authority over others. Decisions would be made by consensus. Sentinel Prime was quiet for a long moment. Your proposal is idealistic, but it ignores practical realities. What happens when species disagree? What happens when resources become scarce? What happens when one civilization decides to conquer others? Then we deal with those problems when they arise, Jake said. Together, as a galactic community instead of as isolated rivals. And if your cooperation initiative fails? Sentinel Prime asked. Then we'll face the consequences together, too, President Santos replied. But at least we'll face them as free beings making our own choices, not as puppets being controlled by an ancient guardian race. The view screen suddenly split to show multiple alien faces. Jake recognized representatives from several of the species they had contacted over the past 6 months. The human proposal has merit, said a Velhari diplomat, speaking through the universal translator. My people are willing to participate in this cooperation council. The Kozani agree, said another alien representative. We are tired of isolation and conflict. One by one, alien species began announcing their support for humanity's proposal. Even some of the species that the architects had classified as aggressive expressed interest in trying a cooperative approach. Sentinel Prime watched the announcements with what might have been surprise. This is unprecedented. In 10 million years, we have never seen such widespread cooperation between species. Maybe that's because you never gave them the chance, Jake said. You assumed they couldn't work together, so you never let them try. 3 months had passed since the USS Horizon's encounter with Sentinel Prime. Captain Jake Morrison now found himself standing in a secure conference room on Earth's moon, surrounded by the most powerful leaders in human civilization. The room was filled with presidents, prime ministers, generals, and scientists from every major nation on Earth. Admiral Carol Peterson, the head of Earth's Unified Space Command, sat at the head of the conference table. She was a stern woman, with gray hair who had spent her entire career preparing for humanity's expansion into space. Now she was facing decisions that would determine whether that expansion would ever happen. Ladies and gentlemen, Admiral Peterson began, we have all read the reports from Captain Morrison and his crew. We have all spoken with Sentinel Prime and seen the evidence of what the architects have done. Today we must make the most important decision in human history. Dr. Alex Turner, Earth's leading xenobiologist, was studying holographic displays that showed the current state of galactic civilization. The biological modifications that the architects have made to other species are irreversible, he said. Even if we wanted to undo their work, we don't have the technology to restore these civilizations to their original state. Strategic advisor Megan Clark was reviewing intelligence reports about the various alien species. Our analysis suggests that at least 30 civilizations would immediately become hostile to humanity if the architect protection system was removed. Another 50 species might join them once they realized there was no longer any force keeping them in check. Jake had been promoted to the rank of admiral and appointed as humanity's first ambassador to galactic affairs. He still felt overwhelmed by the responsibility, but someone had to speak for the human perspective in these discussions. We need to consider what each choice really means, Jake said, standing up to address the room. Option 1 is accepting, continued architect protection. This means we become part of their system. Every time they eliminate a species to protect us, we're responsible for those deaths. President Maria Santos of the Earth Federation spoke up. But it also means humanity survives and thrives. We could explore the galaxy safely, establish colonies, and develop our civilization without fear of extinction, at the cost of becoming monsters, said Dr. Rachel Kumar, Earth's leading ethicist. We would be living in a galaxy shaped by genocide and slavery. Every peaceful alien we meet would be peaceful only because the architects made them that way. General Robert Hayes, the head of Earth's military forces, was studying tactical projections on his tablet. Option 2 is rejecting the protection and facing the galaxy on our own. Our military analysis shows we would have almost no chance of survival. Earth could be destroyed within months of hostile species learning about our location. But we would face that threat with our honor intact, said Minister Chen Wei of the Asian Coalition. We would not be responsible for the deaths of billions of innocent beings. Admiral Peterson looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. And option 3 is taking over as the new Galactic Guardians. We would inherit the architects' technology and their responsibility for managing galactic civilization. Dr. Turner was shaking his head. The psychological impact on our species would be devastating. How do you train humans to eliminate entire civilizations? How do you maintain a society that views itself as morally superior while committing genocide? On a galactic scale? Megan Clark had been analyzing historical data about the architects' methods. We've studied their techniques for maintaining social stability while managing galactic affairs. They use a combination of compartmentalization, philosophical conditioning, and selective memory modification on their own personnel. You're talking about brainwashing our own people, said President Santos with disgust. It's how the architects have maintained their sanity for 10 million years, Megan replied. The alternative is having a species of beings who are constantly aware that they're mass murderers. Jake walked over to the large viewport that showed Earth hanging in space below the lunar conference facility. There's something else we need to consider, he said. Sentinel Prime told us that the architects failed to protect the progenitors because they weren't experienced enough with galactic politics. What makes us think we could do better? Dr. Turner looked up from his biological data. The architects have been studying the problem for 6 million years since then. If we accepted their role, we would inherit all of their knowledge and experience. We would also inherit their mistakes, said Dr. Kumar. The current system they've created is unstable. It requires constant intervention to maintain. It's not sustainable in the long term. General Hayes was reviewing military intelligence reports. Our analysts have identified a fourth option that Sentinel Prime didn't mention. We could try to expose the truth to the entire galaxy and let all species decide together how to move forward. Admiral Peterson leaned back in her chair. That would likely result in the immediate collapse of galactic civilization. Most alien species would be horrified to learn how much they've been manipulated. The result would be chaos and probably the largest war in galactic history. Which brings us back to the same 3 choices, Jake said grimly. Accept protection and become complicit. Reject protection and face extinction. Or take over the system ourselves and become the new galactic overlords. The room fell silent as everyone contemplated the impossible nature of their situation. Every choice seemed to lead to either moral compromise or species extinction. President Santos spoke up again. What did Captain Morrison recommend in his initial report? Jake turned away from the viewport to face the room. I recommended that we look for a way to change the fundamental structure of the problem rather than just choosing among the options we were given. What do you mean? Asked Dr. Turner. The current system is based on the assumption that aggressive species will always be aggressive, and that peaceful coexistence is impossible, Jake explained. But what if that assumption is wrong? What if there's a way to achieve galactic stability without requiring anyone to eliminate entire civilizations? Megan Clark was studying her strategic analysis reports. Our modeling suggests that any attempt to create a new system would require the cooperation of hundreds of species across the galaxy. The logistics alone would be nearly impossible. The HFY architects managed to coordinate actions across the entire galaxy for 6 million years, Jake pointed out. If they could organize genocide on that scale, maybe we could organize something better. General Hayes looked skeptical. You're talking about convincing species that have been enemies for millions of years to suddenly start cooperating. Many of them don't even know that other species exist. That's exactly the point, Jake said. The current conflicts are based on ignorance and fear. The architects have been preventing species from getting to know each other. What if we tried the opposite approach? Dr. Kumar was nodding thoughtfully. A galactic communication and cooperation initiative instead of a galactic management system. But it would require species to voluntarily give up their aggressive tendencies. Not all species are naturally aggressive, Dr. Turner added. Many of the civilizations that exist today are peaceful by nature. The problem is the artificial scarcity and competition that the architect system has created. Admiral Peterson was studying projections on her tablet. Even if such a system could work in theory, the transition period would be extremely dangerous. We would have to convince hostile species to participate while humanity was still vulnerable. Which brings us back to the time pressure, Jake said. Sentinel Prime told us we have 6 months before the current system becomes unstable. That's not enough time to organize a galaxy-wide cooperation initiative. The room was quiet again as everyone realized they were back to the original 3 choices. Accept the protection, reject it, or take it over. I think we need to vote, Admiral Peterson said finally. All those in favor of accepting continued architect protection, raise your hands. About a third of the leaders raised their hands. All. Those in favor of rejecting the protection and facing the galaxy independently? Another third raised their hands. All those in favor of taking over as the new galactic guardians? The remaining third raised their hands. Admiral Peterson looked around the room with a grim expression. We're evenly divided. Humanity can't make this decision democratically because there's no clear majority for any option. Jake stepped forward. Then maybe we need to try something that's never been done before. Maybe we need to make a choice that isn't on the list of options we were given. What do you have in mind? President Santos asked. Jake looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. We tell the architects that we reject all 3 options. We demand 6 more months to attempt creating a 4th option. And if they won't give us that time, we're prepared to take our chances with independence. That's essentially choosing option 2 with a delay, General Hayes pointed out. Not necessarily, Jake replied. It's betting that we can change the rules of the game instead of just playing by the rules we've been given. It's the most human choice we could make. Sentinel Prime raised its hand again, and new holographic images began forming in the air above the bridge of the USS Horizon. Captain Jake Morrison and his crew watched as the display showed detailed records of galactic history spanning millions of years. Before your leaders can make an informed decision, Sentinel Prime said, you must understand the full scope of what has been done in humanity's name. What I showed you earlier was only a summary. The reality is far more complex. The images showed star systems being carefully monitored by invisible architect vessels. Jake could see alien civilizations developing technology, building cities, and expanding into space, completely unaware that their every move was being watched and evaluated. Dr. Helen Gray was studying the data streams accompanying the images. These look like intelligence reports. How detailed is your surveillance of other species? We monitor every spacefaring civilization constantly, Sentinel Prime replied. We track their technological development, their political structures, their military capabilities, and their expansion patterns. We have agents embedded in many of their societies. Tony Martinez looked up from his communications station, where he had been analyzing some of the data. Agents? You mean there are architects living among alien populations, pretending to be one of them? Not architects themselves, Sentinel Prime explained. We create synthetic beings designed to perfectly mimic the appearance and behavior of target species. These agents gather intelligence and sometimes influence key decisions to prevent actions that might threaten humanity. Amy Rodriguez was watching images of what appeared to be alien political meetings. So you've been manipulating the governments of other species for millions of years? When necessary, Sentinel Prime confirmed. For example, the Calrathian Republic developed faster-than-light technology 800,000 years ago. Their natural expansion pattern would have led them to your solar system within 50,000 years. We arranged for their government to become focused on internal conflicts rather than external exploration. Kate Sullivan was monitoring the technical aspects of the holographic display. How did you arrange that? Our agents infiltrated their political parties and began promoting ideologies that emphasized domestic development over interstellar expansion. Within 2 generations, the Calrathians became a completely inward-focused society. They now consider space exploration to be a waste of resources. Jake felt a chill as he realized the implications. You've been brainwashing entire civilizations to change their basic values and goals. We prefer the term cultural guidance, Sentinel Prime said. Direct military action is only used when subtler methods fail. Most species never realize they have been influenced. The holographic display changed to show a different part of the galaxy. Danny Brooks was taking detailed notes on his tablet as new information appeared. What's happening in this region? He asked. This shows the Vorthak Empire, one of the most aggressive militaristic species we have encountered, Sentinel Prime explained. They conquered 17 star systems in less than 1,000 years. Their technology was advancing rapidly, and their expansion pattern would have led them directly toward Earth. Lisa Parker was studying the energy signatures in the display. What did you do to them? We introduced a plague that specifically targeted their neural development, Sentinel Prime said matter-of-factly. Over 50 generations, their average intelligence decreased by approximately 30%. They are now incapable of maintaining their advanced technology. Their empire has collapsed into primitive tribal warfare. The bridge was completely silent except for the humming of ship systems. Jake stared at Sentinel Prime in horror. You deliberately made an entire species less intelligent? It was more humane than elimination, Sentinel Prime replied. The Vorthak still exist as a species. They simply no longer pose a threat to anyone. Ben Carter was monitoring his tactical displays while listening to the conversation. How many species have you done this to? Biological modification has been used on 43 different civilizations. Some had their aggression levels reduced. Others had their reproductive rates lowered to prevent overpopulation and resource conflicts. A few had their intelligence enhanced to make them more peaceful and philosophical. Dr. Helen Gray was shaking her head in disbelief. You're talking about genetic manipulation on the scale of entire species. The ethical implications are staggering. Ethics are relative to perspective and circumstance, Sentinel Prime said. From our perspective, preventing the extinction of humanity justifies these actions. The progenitors were the most promising species we had ever encountered. We will not allow their legacy to be destroyed again. Emma Foster had been quietly studying the star charts. Are there any species in the galaxy that you haven't interfered with in some way? Very few, Sentinel Prime admitted. Most civilizations have been influenced either directly or indirectly. Even species that we haven't directly modified exist in a galaxy shaped by our actions. The removal of aggressive species has created opportunities for peaceful ones to thrive. Jake walked over to the main viewport and stared out at the stars. Every point of light now seemed different to him, knowing that most of them hosted civilizations that had been secretly controlled or manipulated for millions of years. What about species that developed after you started this protection program? He asked. Did they have any chance to develop naturally? All species that achieved spaceflight in the past 6 million years have been evaluated and processed according to our protocols, Sentinel Prime said. Species deemed compatible with humanity's future expansion were allowed to develop normally. Those deemed incompatible were managed appropriately. Sam Hughes looked up from his station with a disturbed expression. Managed appropriately. That's a nice way to say murdered or enslaved. We do not enslave species, Sentinel Prime corrected. Relocation and biological modification are not slavery. They are conservation methods. Tony Martinez had been analyzing communication patterns in the holographic data. I'm seeing records of species that tried to resist your interventions. What happened to them? The display changed to show massive space battles between architect vessels and alien fleets. The alien ships were using advanced weapons and sophisticated tactics, but they were still being systematically destroyed by the superior architect technology. Resistance was rare, but not unknown, Sentinel Prime explained. The Nexari Coalition was the most organized opposition we faced. They discovered evidence of our activities and attempted to unite multiple species against us. The war lasted 12,000 years. Who won? Amy asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. The Nexari Coalition and all its member species were eliminated, Sentinel Prime said. Their home worlds were sterilized, and their planets were seeded with new life forms. The current inhabitants of those worlds have no knowledge of their predecessors. Kate was studying the technical readouts from the ancient battles. The energy weapons you used in those fights, are they the same ones you used on the Zephyrian fleet? The technology has been improved over time, but the basic principles remain the same, Sentinel Prime confirmed. We have weapons capable of destroying planets, eliminating entire star systems, or removing matter from reality itself. Jake turned back to face the architect representative. How many civilizations currently exist that are secretly working for you? 17 species have been recruited as active allies, Sentinel Prime said. They believe they are working with us voluntarily, but their cooperation was ensured through careful manipulation of their development. They provide us with intelligence, resources, and personnel when needed. Personnel? Dr. Helen Gray asked. Soldiers. Scientists and specialists recruited from allied species, Sentinel Prime explained. Many of our operations are carried out by these allies rather than by architects directly. It helps maintain the illusion that we are not actively managing galactic affairs. Danny Brooks looked up from his notes with a worried expression. Are any of these allied species planning to contact humanity? Several have requested permission to establish diplomatic relations with Earth, Sentinel Prime said. We have denied these requests until now. However, If humanity chooses to accept our protection openly, these species will be allowed to make contact under our supervision. The holographic display faded away, leaving the bridge in normal lighting. Jake looked around at his crew and saw his own feelings reflected in their faces. They were overwhelmed, horrified, and deeply disturbed by what they had learned. "There's one more thing you need to know," Sentinel Prime said. "The system we have created to protect humanity is not stable without active management. If we withdraw our influence suddenly, the galactic political structure will collapse within months. Dozens of species that have been held in check will begin expanding aggressively. The result will be the largest war in galactic history, and humanity would be caught in the middle of it," Jake said grimly. "Yes," Sentinel Prime confirmed. "Your species would become a target for every faction seeking to expand its territory or settle old grievances. Earth itself would likely be destroyed within the first year of such a conflict." Jake realized that humanity was trapped. They could accept the Sentinel Prime gestured again, and the floating images above its hand changed to show new scenes. Captain Jake Morrison and his crew watched as the holographic display revealed star charts marking hundreds of solar systems across the galaxy. Many of the stars were highlighted in different colors. "To understand your responsibilities, you must first understand the scope of what we have done to protect humanity," Sentinel Prime said. "This galaxy is not the natural, chaotic place your scientists believe it to be. For 6 million years, we have been carefully managing its development." Dr. Helen Gray studied the star chart floating in the air. "What do the different colors mean?" "Red systems mark civilizations we have completely eliminated," Sentinel Prime explained. "Yellow systems show species we have relocated to distant parts of the galaxy. Blue systems represent civilizations whose technological development we have slowed or redirected." Jake counted the marked systems and felt his stomach turn. There were dozens of red markers scattered across the galaxy. All of those species were destroyed because they might have threatened humanity? "Not all were immediate threats," Sentinel Prime admitted. "Some were eliminated because our projections showed they would become dangerous to humanity in the future. Others were removed because their expansion would have led them to discover Earth before your species was ready for contact." Lieutenant Sam Hughes, one of the junior officers, spoke up from his station. "How could you know what would happen in the future? That seems impossible." Sentinel Prime turned its glowing blue eyes toward him. "We have had 10 million years to study the patterns of civilization development, Lieutenant Hughes. We can predict with 97% accuracy how any given species will behave based on their early history, technology, and social structure." Navigator Emma Foster had been quietly listening to the conversation. Now she stepped forward with a troubled expression. "So you've been playing God with the entire galaxy, deciding which species deserve to live and which ones should be eliminated?" "That is an accurate description," Sentinel Prime said without emotion, "though we prefer to think of it as gardening. We have cultivated the galaxy to create the best possible environment for humanity's growth and development." Amy Rodriguez was staring at the holographic star chart. "How many intelligent beings have died because of this protection? How many civilizations were wiped out before they ever had a chance to prove themselves?" Sentinel Prime paused for a moment as if calculating. "Approximately 430 billion intelligent individuals have been eliminated or relocated over the past 6 million years. However, our projections indicate that without our intervention, humanity would have been extinct within 50,000 years of developing space travel." The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of the ship systems. Jake felt sick to his stomach. Hundreds of billions of people had been killed to protect a human species that didn't even know it needed protection. Tony Martinez, the communications officer who had been monitoring alien signals, looked up from his station. "Are you telling us that most of the peaceful species we've detected out there are only peaceful because you made them that way?" "Correct," Sentinel Prime confirmed. "The civilizations that still exist in this galaxy fall into three categories: species that were naturally peaceful and posed no threat to humanity, species that we modified to become peaceful, and species that we allowed to remain aggressive because they were too far away to ever encounter humans." Kate Sullivan had been quiet during most of the conversation, but now she spoke up with anger in her voice. "You're mass murderers. You've committed genocide on a scale that's impossible to comprehend. How can you stand there and talk about it like it's normal?" Sentinel Prime's expression didn't change. "We understand your emotional response, Chief Sullivan. However, you must consider the alternative. Without our intervention, humanity would have encountered dozens of hostile species while you were still limited to slower-than-light travel. Your species would have been enslaved, experimented upon, or completely destroyed." Danny Brooks was still taking notes on his tablet, but his hands were shaking. "What about the species that weren't threatening? Why did they have to die just because they might have discovered Earth? Every species that achieved interstellar travel would eventually have explored your solar system," Sentinel Prime explained. "Even peaceful contact would have disrupted humanity's natural development. You needed to develop your own technology, your own culture, and your own solutions to social problems without outside influence." Jake walked over to the main viewport and stared out at the stars. "So we're not special because of what we've accomplished. We're special because you killed everyone who might have interfered with us." "Your accomplishments are genuine," Sentinel Prime said. "But yes, they were only possible because we created the conditions that allowed them to happen. This is the burden that the progenitors never had to face. They developed in a galaxy that had not yet been shaped by our intervention." Dr. Helen Gray was studying the biological data displayed in the holographic images. "Why didn't you just relocate humanity to a safe part of the galaxy instead of reshaping the entire galactic civilization structure?" "We considered that option," Sentinel Prime replied. "But our analysis showed that humanity needed the challenge of developing on a dangerous world like Earth. The struggle to survive and thrive in a hostile environment was essential for developing the mental and emotional traits that make your species unique." Emma Foster was looking at the tactical displays with Ben Carter. "How many species are left in the galaxy that don't know about this protection system you've created?" "All of them," Sentinel Prime said. "The species that we allowed to survive believe that the galaxy has always been as it is now. They have no knowledge of the civilizations that were eliminated or relocated. They think they live in a naturally evolved galactic community." Amy was studying the star charts more carefully. "What happens to this system now that we know about it? You can't keep secretly managing the galaxy if humans are going to be traveling among the stars." Sentinel Prime's expression became more serious. "That is the choice your species must make, Commander Rodriguez. Now that you know the truth, you must decide what role humanity will play in the galaxy going forward." Jake turned away from the viewport to face the architect representative. "What do you mean?" "You have three options," Sentinel Prime explained. "First, you can accept our continued protection. We will maintain the current system, ensuring that humanity can expand into the galaxy safely. However, this means accepting responsibility for the management of all other species." "What's the second option?" Jake asked. You can reject our protection and face the galaxy as it truly is. We will withdraw our influence and allow natural galactic development to resume. However, this means that humanity will encounter dozens of hostile species that have been waiting for the opportunity to expand their territories. Kate looked up from her engineering station. And the third option? You can choose to become the new guardians of the galaxy, Sentinel Prime said. We will teach humanity our technology and our methods. Your species can take over the role that we have played for 6 million years. The bridge was quiet as the crew considered these choices. Each option seemed impossible to accept. Jake realized that there were no good answers to this situation. How long do we have to decide? He asked. The galaxy is already changing in response to our recent actions, Sentinel Prime said. The elimination of the Zephyrian fleet has been noticed by other species. Some are asking questions about who has the power to make entire fleets disappear. You have perhaps 6 months before the current balance becomes unstable. Jake looked around at his crew. They all seemed as overwhelmed as he felt. This is too big a decision for one ship's crew to make. This affects all of humanity. We understand, Sentinel Prime said. That is why we are prepared to transport representatives from your governments to a secure location where they can be briefed on the situation. But Captain Morrison, you should know that the galaxy is not patient. Decisions made by committee often come too late to matter. The holographic images faded away, leaving the bridge in normal lighting. Sentinel Prime stood in the center of the room like a metallic statue, waiting for humanity's response to the most important choice in their species' history. Sentinel Prime stood in the center of the USS Horizon's bridge, its metallic skin reflecting the light from the control panels. Captain Jake Morrison and his crew watched the being with a mixture of fear and fascination. They had just witnessed this creature's people erase an entire alien fleet from existence, and now it wanted to explain why humanity was being protected. Before I tell you the truth about your species, Sentinel Prime said, I must ask you to prepare yourselves. The knowledge I am about to share will change everything you believe about humanity's place in the universe. Dr. Helen Gray stepped forward from her position near the science stations. We're scientists and explorers, she said. We came out, here to learn the truth about what's beyond our world. Whatever you have to tell us, we can handle it. Sentinel Prime's glowing blue eyes focused on her. You have courage, Dr. Gray. That is one of the traits that makes your species valuable. Very well, I will begin. The being raised one hand, and the air above its palm began to glow. Images started forming in the light, showing star systems and planets that the humans had never seen before. The pictures moved like a three-dimensional movie floating in the air. The architects are an ancient race, Sentinel Prime explained, as the images showed a galaxy filled with countless civilizations. We have existed for over 10 million years. During that time, we have watched thousands of intelligent species rise and fall across the galaxy. Jake watched the floating images with amazement. They showed cities that stretched across entire continents, space stations larger than moons, and beings of every imaginable shape and size. How many intelligent species are out there? He asked. Currently, there are approximately 437 active civilizations in this galaxy, Sentinel Prime replied. But there have been many more throughout history. Most species eventually destroy themselves, or are destroyed by others. Amy Rodriguez was studying the images carefully. What makes humanity different? Why are we worth protecting when so many other species weren't? The floating images changed, now showing creatures that looked remarkably similar to humans. They had the same basic body shape, the same kind of faces, and even similar expressions. 6 million years ago, we encountered a species called the progenitors, Sentinel Prime said. They were almost identical to modern humans in both appearance and behavior. Lisa Parker was recording everything with her communications equipment. "What happened to them?" she asked. Sentinel Prime's expression became deeply sad. The progenitors were extraordinary. They had the same creativity, curiosity, and determination that we observe in humans. They could solve problems that stumped much older civilizations. They created art that moved beings across the galaxy to tears. They had an incredible capacity for both love and sacrifice. Danny Brooks was taking notes on his tablet. "But they're gone now, aren't they?" "Yes," Sentinel Prime confirmed. The progenitors also had humanity's capacity for violence and destruction when threatened. As they expanded into space and encountered other species, conflicts arose. Many alien civilizations feared the progenitors' rapid advancement and their unpredictable nature. The images in the air now showed space battles and burning planets. Jake watched in horror as the beautiful progenitor cities were reduced to ash and rubble. They were wiped out by other species? A coalition of 12 older civilizations decided that the progenitors were too dangerous to be allowed to continue existing, Sentinel Prime explained. They believed that the progenitors would eventually conquer or destroy all other life in the galaxy. The war lasted 300 years and ended with the complete extinction of the progenitor species. Kate Sullivan had come up from engineering to listen to the story. "Where were the architects during this war? Why didn't you help them?" Sentinel Prime was quiet for a long moment. "We failed them," it finally said. "We were younger then, less experienced with the complexities of galactic politics. We believed that superior technology and wisdom would naturally prevail. We did not understand how fear and jealousy could drive civilizations to commit genocide." Ben Carter was monitoring his tactical displays while listening to the conversation. "So you're protecting us because we remind you of this extinct species?" "You are more than similar to the progenitors," Sentinel Prime said. "According to our genetic analysis, humans are their direct descendants. A small number of progenitors escaped the genocide and found refuge on a distant primitive planet. That planet was Earth." The bridge fell completely silent. Jake felt like the deck was spinning beneath his feet. "Are you saying that humans aren't originally from Earth? Your ancestors colonized Earth approximately 6 million years ago," Sentinel Prime confirmed. "They were refugees, the last survivors of their species. They had to abandon their technology and live as primitives to avoid detection by the coalition that had destroyed their civilization." Dr. Helen Gray was shaking her head in disbelief. "That's impossible. We have fossil evidence of human evolution on Earth going back millions of years. We evolved from earlier primates." "Your scientists are correct about human evolution on Earth," Sentinel Prime said. "But they do not know that the process was guided. The progenitor refugees used advanced genetic technology to adapt themselves to Earth's environment over many generations. They deliberately made themselves appear to be a natural part of Earth's ecosystem." Amy looked at the images still floating in the air. "So all of human history, everything we've achieved, it's all because we're the survivors of an extinct alien race." "Your achievements are your own," Sentinel Prime said firmly. "The progenitor refugees abandoned their technology and started over with nothing. Everything humanity has built, from your first cities to your space program, you accomplished through your own effort and ingenuity. The genetic potential was there, but you had to develop it yourselves." Jake was trying to process everything he had heard. "How long have you been watching us?" We have monitored humanity since your ancestors first arrived on Earth, Sentinel Prime replied. We were determined not to repeat our failure with the progenitors. As your species developed, we made sure that no threats could reach you before you were ready to defend yourselves. Lisa was studying her communication records. The warning message that was broadcast across the galaxy 3 weeks ago. How long have you been sending messages like that? This was the first time we felt the need for such a broad warning, Sentinel Prime said. Usually we dealt with potential threats more quietly. We would adjust the development of aggressive species, relocate dangerous civilizations, or simply eliminate threats before they became aware of humanity's existence. Ben looked up from his tactical station with a worried expression. How many species have you eliminated to protect us? Sentinel. Prime paused before answering. Over the past 6 million years, we have been forced to take action against 47 civilizations that posed a threat to humanity's development. Some were relocated to distant parts of the galaxy. Others were technologically diminished. In the most extreme cases, species that could not be reasoned with were removed from existence. The bridge was quiet again as the crew absorbed this information. Jake realized that humanity's apparently peaceful development had only been possible because an ancient alien race had been secretly managing the entire galaxy to keep them safe. What happens now? Jake asked. You've revealed yourselves to us. Does that change anything? Sentinel Prime's expression became more serious. Yes, Captain Morrison, your species has reached a critical point in its development. You have achieved faster-than-light travel and are beginning to explore the galaxy. It is time for humanity to learn the truth about its origins and its responsibilities. What responsibilities? Dr. Helen Gray asked. You are the last children of the progenitors, Sentinel Prime said. Their legacy lives on in humanity. But that legacy comes with choices that will determine not only your future, but the future of every intelligent species in this galaxy. Captain Jake Morrison opened his eyes, expecting to see his bridge destroyed and his crew dead. Instead, he saw something that made no sense. Space in front of the alien fleet was twisting and bending like water. Reality itself seemed to be folding inward, creating a hole in the darkness between stars. What the hell is that? Amy Rodriguez whispered, staring at the main screen. Danny Brooks was frantically checking his instruments. Captain, I'm reading massive energy distortions. It's like someone is tearing a hole through space and time. The physics of this should be impossible. Through the twisted space, enormous ships began to emerge. These vessels were unlike anything human or Zephyrian. They were smooth and silver, shaped like flowing water that had been frozen in time. The smallest of these new ships was larger than the biggest Zephyrian warship. Lisa Parker was trying to scan the new arrivals with her communications equipment. I'm not picking up any signals from these ships, Captain. They're completely silent. But they're moving into position around the Zephyrian fleet. Jake counted at least 12 of the mysterious vessels. They moved through space with impossible grace, positioning themselves between the human ships and the Zephyrian Empire's fleet. The aliens who had been attacking the USS Horizon suddenly stopped firing and turned their attention to the new arrivals. The Zephyrians are trying to communicate with the new ships, Lisa reported. They're sending messages on all frequencies, but they're not getting any response. Ben Carter was watching his tactical displays with amazement. Captain, these new ships don't show up properly on our sensors. It's like they're only partially here. And I'm not reading any weapons, but the energy signatures are off the charts. One of the silver ships moved closer to the largest Zephyrian vessel. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, without any visible weapons fire or explosion, the Zephyrian ship simply vanished. It didn't blow up or break apart. It was there 1 second and gone the next, as if it had never existed. The bridge of the USS Horizon fell silent. Jake and his crew watched in shock as the silver ships methodically approached each Zephyrian vessel. One by one, the alien warships disappeared from existence. There were no energy beams, no missiles, no explosions. The Zephyrian fleet was being erased from reality itself. "This is impossible," Dr. Helen Gray said, her voice barely audible. "Matter can't just disappear like that. They're not destroying those ships. They're making them cease to exist." Some of the Zephyrian ships tried to fight back. They fired their most powerful weapons at the silver vessels, but the energy beams passed right through them without causing any damage. Other Zephyrian ships attempted to flee, jumping to faster-than-light speed, but the silver ships followed them somehow and made them vanish before they could escape. Kate Sullivan was monitoring the USS Horizon's sensors from her engineering station. "Captain, the energy levels from those silver ships are beyond anything we can measure. Our instruments can't even calculate how much power they're using. It's like they're drawing energy from somewhere else entirely." The systematic elimination of the Zephyrian fleet continued for 20 minutes. Jake and his crew could only watch in amazement and terror as 50 alien warships were removed from existence by beings with technology that seemed like magic. The silver ships worked with perfect coordination, never communicating with each other in any way humans could detect. When the last Zephyrian vessel vanished, the silver ships turned their attention to the human vessels. Jake felt his heart stop. If these beings could erase an entire alien fleet without effort, there was nothing stopping them from doing the same to the USS Horizon and the New Haven. "Should we try to run, Captain?" Amy asked quietly. Jake shook his head. "Where would we go? If they wanted to destroy us, we'd already be gone. Let's see what they want." One of the silver ships moved closer to the USS Horizon. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time, its surface reflecting the light of nearby stars like liquid metal. As it approached, Jake could see that it had no visible windows, engines, or weapons. It looked more like a piece of art than a spacecraft. "Captain, I'm reading some kind of scanning beam from that ship," Danny reported. "It's very gentle, not like the aggressive scans the Zephyrians were using. They seem to be studying us." Lisa suddenly looked up from her station with excitement. "Sir, I'm receiving a transmission from the silver ship. It's in perfect English." A calm, musical voice filled the bridge. The tone was neither male nor female, but somehow conveyed great age and wisdom. "Human vessels USS Horizon and New Haven, you are safe. The threat to your species has been eliminated. Please remain in your current positions. We will board your ship momentarily to explain the situation." Jake looked around at his crew. They all seemed as confused as he was. "Lisa, send a response. Tell them we're grateful for their help and we'll cooperate." "Message sent, Captain," Lisa said. Amy stepped closer to Jake and spoke quietly. "Sir, should we trust them? We don't know anything about these beings. They just erased 50 ships from existence without breaking a sweat." "Do we have a choice?" Jake replied. "They could have destroyed us along with the Zephyrians if they wanted to. The fact that they're talking to us instead of erasing us suggests they might actually be trying to help." Dr. Helen Gray was studying the readings from the silver ship. "Captain, I'm not detecting any life signs from that vessel. Either their technology is blocking our scans, or there's no one alive on that ship." Before Jake could respond, the air in the center of the bridge began to shimmer. The crew stepped back as a column of light appeared, growing brighter and more solid by the second. When the light faded, a figure stood where nothing had been moments before. The being looked humanoid, but was clearly not human. It was tall and slender, with smooth, metallic skin that reflected light like the silver ships. Its face had familiar features, but the proportions were slightly off, as if someone had tried to create a human appearance from memory. Most unsettling were its eyes, which glowed with a soft blue light. "Greetings, humans of Earth," the being said in the same musical voice they had heard over the communication system. "I am Sentinel Prime, representative of the Architects. We apologize for the delay in our response to the Zephyrian aggression. You and your people are safe now." Jake stepped forward, trying to keep his voice steady. "Thank you for saving us. But I have to ask, who are the Architects? And why did you help us?" Sentinel Prime looked at Jake with those glowing blue eyes. "The Architects are the guardians of this galaxy, Captain Morrison. We have been protecting humanity for far longer than your species realizes. The warning message you received 3 weeks ago was our final attempt to prevent situations like this one." "You sent that message?" Amy asked. "Yes, Commander Rodriguez. We hoped that other species would respect our warning and leave humanity alone. Unfortunately, the Zephyrian Empire chose to ignore our protection. They will not make that mistake again." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "What happened to them? Did you kill all those people?" Sentinel Prime tilted its head slightly. "The Zephyrian fleet has been removed from this reality. Their consciousness has been transferred to a place where they can no longer harm others. Death is an inefficient solution. Rehabilitation is preferable when possible." The bridge was quiet as the crew tried to understand what they had just heard. These architects had technology that could move entire fleets to different realities. They had been protecting humanity without humans even knowing about it, and they spoke about reshaping the galaxy like it was a simple task. "Why are you protecting us?" Jake asked. "What makes humans so special?" Sentinel Prime's expression seemed to become sadder. "That is a long story, Captain Morrison. And it is a story that will change how your species sees itself and its place in the universe." 3 weeks had passed since the USS Horizon received the strange warning message. Captain Jake Morrison and his crew had been traveling deeper into space, trying to learn more about the mysterious broadcast. They had picked up dozens of alien communications, but none of them made complete sense yet. Lisa Parker was working late at her communications station when she detected something new. "Captain Morrison to the bridge immediately," she announced over the ship's intercom. Her voice sounded urgent. Jake arrived on the bridge within minutes, followed by Commander Amy Rodriguez and several other officers. "What do you have, Lisa?" Jake asked. "Sir, I'm picking up human distress signals about 12 light hours away. It's coming from the New Haven, one of our colony ships. They launched from Earth 6 months ago to establish humanity's first settlement outside our solar system." Danny Brooks looked up from his science station. "Captain, I'm also detecting a large number of alien ships in that same area. The energy signatures are unlike anything we've seen before. There are at least 50 vessels, and some of them are massive." Jake felt his stomach drop. The New Haven carried 5,000 colonists, including families with children. They were civilians who had volunteered to start a new life on a distant planet. If alien ships had found them, the colonists would be completely helpless. Amy set course for the New Haven's position. "Maximum speed," Jake ordered. "Ben, prepare." All weapon systems. I don't know what we're flying into, but we need to be ready for anything. Ben Carter worked quickly at his tactical station. Weapons ready, Captain. But, sir, if there really are 50 alien ships out there, we won't be able to fight them all. The Horizon only has basic defensive weapons. I know, Jake said grimly, but we can't abandon those people. They're counting on us. The USS Horizon jumped to faster-than-light speed and raced toward the distress signal. During the 6-hour journey, the crew prepared for the worst. Dr. Helen Gray worked with the medical team to get ready for possible casualties. Kate Sullivan made sure all ship systems were running perfectly. Everyone knew they might be flying into a battle they couldn't win. When they arrived at the New Haven's location, the scene was worse than they had imagined. The human colony ship was surrounded by alien vessels that looked like nothing humanity had ever built. The alien ships were dark and angular, with strange energy weapons pointed at the helpless human vessel. "My God," Amy whispered, staring at the main screen. "Look at the size of those ships. The largest one must be 5 times bigger than our ship." Lisa was monitoring communications from both the human and alien vessels. "Captain, the New Haven is trying to surrender. They're broadcasting on all frequencies that they're peaceful civilians. But the aliens aren't responding to their messages." Danny was scanning the alien ships with every sensor the Horizon had. "Sir, I'm reading the alien technology now. These ships belong to something called the Zephyrian Empire. Their weapons are much more advanced than ours. The energy readings suggest they could destroy our ship with one shot." Jake watched as smaller alien vessels moved closer to the New Haven. It looked like they were preparing to board the colony ship. "What are they doing, Danny?" "I think they're trying to capture the colonists, Captain. Based on their ship movements and energy patterns, it looks like they want to take the humans alive." This made Jake even more worried. If the aliens wanted to capture humans rather than destroy them, it probably meant they had plans for the colonists. Those plans were unlikely to be good. "Lisa, try to contact the alien ships. Tell them we're here to negotiate for the release of the human civilians," Jake ordered. Lisa sent the message on multiple frequencies. After a few minutes, she received a response. "Captain, they're answering. The signal is being translated through our systems now." A harsh artificial voice came through the bridge speakers. "Human vessel, you will retreat immediately or be destroyed. The primitive creatures on the colony ship now belong to the Zephyrian Empire. They will be taken for study and labor. Your species is weak and has no right to travel among the stars." Jake clenched his fists. The aliens were talking about humans like they were animals to be captured and used. "Send a response, Lisa. Tell them that humans are protected by galactic law. Remind them of the warning message that was broadcast 3 weeks ago." Lisa sent the message, but the alien response was immediate and angry. "The Zephyrian Empire recognizes no authority in this galaxy except our own. Your species has no protector. The warning you speak of was sent by cowards who hide in the darkness. We do not fear shadows and empty threats." On the main screen, Jake could see alien soldiers beginning to board the New Haven. The human ship's defenses were useless against the advanced alien technology. The colonists were trapped with nowhere to run. "Captain, we have to do something," Amy said. "We can't just watch them take those people." Jake knew she was right, but he also knew they had almost no chance of winning a fight against 50 alien warships. Still, he couldn't abandon 5,000 innocent humans to slavery or worse. "Ben, target the nearest alien ship. Maybe if we surprise them, we can disable 1 or 2 before they destroy us. At least we'll buy the New Haven some time to try to escape." Ben's fingers moved across his controls. "Weapons locked on target, Captain. But, sir, our weapons probably won't do much damage to their shields." "Fire when ready," Jake said. The USS Horizon's weapons struck the nearest Zephyrian ship. The energy beams hit the alien vessel's shields and created bright flashes of light, but did no real damage. The alien ship immediately turned toward the Horizon and began charging its much more powerful weapons. "Incoming missiles, Captain," Ben reported. "Multiple ships are targeting us now." Jake gripped his chair as the first. Alien weapons struck his ship. The Horizon shook violently, and several bridge consoles exploded in showers of sparks. Emergency lights began flashing as the ship's shields failed under the massive assault. "Hull damage on decks 5 and 6, Kate reported from engineering. "We're losing power to main systems. Sir, we can't take many more hits like that." Jake looked at the main screen and saw at least 20 alien ships turning their weapons toward the Horizon. In a few seconds, his ship and crew would be destroyed. The New Haven would be captured, and there would be no one left to tell Earth what had happened to them. "Amy, send a message to Earth," Jake said quietly. "Tell them what we found here. Tell them about the Zephyrians and what they did to the colonists." Amy worked quickly to send the message, but Jake knew it would take months to reach Earth. By then, it would be too late to help anyone. The alien ships fired again. Jake closed his eyes and waited for the end. But instead of the explosion he expected, something impossible happened. Space itself seemed to tear open right in front of the alien fleet. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Horizon, watching the stars through the main viewport. His ship was 3 months into humanity's first deep space exploration mission. They had traveled farther from Earth than any human before them. The crew of 200 people were excited to discover what waited for them in the darkness between stars. Lisa Parker sat at her communications station, monitoring radio signals from nearby star systems. She had been doing this job for weeks without finding anything interesting. Most of the signals were just natural radio waves from stars and planets. But today felt different. Her equipment was picking up something strange. "Captain Morrison, I'm getting something unusual here," Lisa said, turning in her chair to face him. "It's not like anything we've seen before. The signal is very strong and coming from multiple directions at once." Jake walked over to her station and looked at the data on her screens. The readings showed a complex pattern that repeated every few minutes. "Can you figure out what it is?" he asked. Danny Brooks, the science officer, came over to help. He was a young man who loved solving puzzles. "Let me run this through our translation software," he said, connecting his tablet to Lisa's equipment. "If this is some kind of message, maybe we can understand it." The bridge became quiet as everyone waited. Other crew members stopped their work to watch. This could be humanity's first contact with alien life. Jake felt his heart beating faster. Everything they were about to learn could change human history forever. After 10 minutes, Danny's tablet started showing results. "Captain, this is incredible," he said, his voice shaking with excitement. "The signal contains the same message repeated in hundreds of different languages. Some of these languages follow patterns we've never seen before. They can't be from Earth." "What does the message say?" Jake asked. Danny read from his tablet screen. "Attention all civilizations. The species known as humans from the third planet of the Sol system are hereby classified as off-limits. Any contact, interference, or aggression toward this species will result in immediate and total annihilation. This is your only warning." The bridge fell completely silent. Jake stared at Danny, not sure he had heard correctly. "Read that again," he said slowly. Danny repeated the message word for word. This time, everyone on the bridge heard it clearly. Lisa checked her equipment again to make sure there was no mistake. The message was real, and it was being broadcast across the entire galaxy. "How is this possible?" asked Amy Rodriguez, the ship's commander. She was Jake's second in command and one of the best military officers in Earth's fleet. "We just developed faster-than-light travel 5 years ago. Most people on Earth don't even know we're out here. Who would send a message like this about humans?" Jake walked back to his captain's chair and sat down. His mind was racing with questions. "Lisa, how wide is this broadcast? Can you tell where it's coming from?" Lisa worked at her station for several minutes. "Captain, this signal is everywhere. It's not coming from one source. It's like someone put transmitters all across the galaxy and turned them on at the same time. The power needed for this would be enormous, way beyond anything humans could build." Ben Carter, the tactical officer, spoke up from his station. "Sir, if this message is real, it means there are other intelligent species out there, and they know about us. They know about Earth." "But why would someone protect us?" asked Kate Sullivan, the chief engineer. She had come to the bridge when she heard about the strange signal. "We're nobody special. We barely know how to travel between stars. What makes us worth protecting?" Dr. Helen Gray, the ship's xenobiologist, had been quiet during the discussion. Now she stepped forward. "Maybe we should think about this differently," she said. "What if we're not being protected? What if we're being isolated? This message could be a warning to keep other species away from us, but not for our benefit." Jake looked around at his crew. They were all scared and confused. He was their captain, and they needed him to stay calm and make good decisions. But the truth was that he felt just as lost as they did. "Danny, can you learn anything else from this signal?" Jake asked. "Any clues about who sent it or why?" Danny worked on his tablet for a while longer. "I'm finding more language patterns, Captain. Some of these languages are very complex. The mathematics behind them suggests these civilizations are much more advanced than us. Whoever sent this message wanted to make sure every intelligent species in the galaxy would understand it." Lisa suddenly sat up straight at her station. "Captain, I'm getting responses to the broadcast. Multiple signals from different parts of the galaxy. It looks like other species are answering the message." "Can you translate any of them?" Jake asked. "Working on it now," Danny said, connecting to Lisa's equipment again. After a few minutes, he looked up with a worried expression. "Most of these responses are acknowledgments. Different species saying they understand the warning. But, Captain, some of them don't sound happy about it." "What do you mean?" Amy asked. "Several messages are questioning the warning. Some species are asking why humans deserve special protection. A few messages sound angry. One species is saying they don't recognize the authority of whoever sent the original warning." Jake stood up and walked to the main viewport again. The stars looked the same as they always had, but now he knew they weren't alone out there. Somewhere in the darkness, dozens or maybe hundreds of intelligent species were talking about humanity. Some were protecting them, others were angry about it. "Lisa, I want you to keep monitoring all communications. Record everything and try to learn as much as possible about who's out there. Danny, work with her to translate as much as you can. Everyone else, keep doing your jobs, but stay alert. We might not be as alone as we thought." Jake turned to face his crew one more time. "I know this is scary and confusing. We came out here to explore and learn about the universe. Well, we just learned something very important. We're not the only intelligent life in the galaxy, and for some reason we're Important enough that someone is protecting us. We need to figure out what that means. As the crew went back to their stations, Jake continued staring out at the stars. The USS Horizon suddenly felt very small in the vastness of space. Somewhere out there, powerful beings were making decisions about humanity's future. Jake wondered if humans would have any say in those decisions. The galaxy had just become a much more dangerous and mysterious place.